welcome to another episode of Radio KBE. Once again, if you've been following along, if you can subscribe, you guys have been doing an amazing job. We're almost at 200 subscribers, which is pretty awesome to do in 10 days. So I appreciate all the folks that have been tuning in. For this episode, we're going to talk about Darvin Ham and the Lakers finalizing their new head coach on the 4-year contract that he has. And it's not necessarily going to be about Darvin Ham. I'm pretty sure you have had a lot of folks already tell you what sort of offense he runs. If you're familiar with the offense that the Bucks run, it's pretty consistent with what that is and just sort of what the defensive principles are. One of the things I wanted to talk about in this video, a little bit more specifically, was in regards to just what happens now. Obviously, Darvin Ham, from the reports that we've seen so far, the word has been that the Lakers are going to allow Ham to choose his own assistant coaches. So we'll see who stays and who goes from the Fizdale, Penn Berthy, Phil Handy group of players that are on the team. Or sorry, not players, coaches that are on the team. So it'll be interesting to see what direction he goes in and which folks he brings aboard. But the thing I wanted to talk about, and it won't be a very deep episode, but one of the things I want to talk about is right now everybody's sort of checklist item now that Ham has been hired is, what are we going to do with Russell Westbrook? And I think that's a valid thing to think of, and it's a valid next step. But I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, and it's something that I think shouldn't be something that is overlooked, is what's going to happen with Anthony Davis. And specifically, when I'm talking about Anthony Davis, it's just how does he fit into Darvin Ham's offense, or the offense that he's eventually going to run. One of the things that's been very difficult to kind of rely on when it comes to Anthony Davis, it's been his motor, even when he's healthy. Obviously, injuries have sapped some of his ability. But one of the things that I've been very curious to see, what will be successful, what will not be successful, is how Anthony Davis fits in within this scheme that Darvin Ham is going to run. And one of the things that makes it work for the Bucks is Giannis's motor is like a generational motor. No matter what you do, no matter what defense you run, he's going to try and get to the rim. Every now and then, obviously the thing that he's been working on is his jump shot. But the thing that makes everything work is that in the crunch time, in the very tough moments when teams are walling up the court, Giannis's ability to continually sort of pummel the defense and go to the rim, and on top of that, his ability to make passes out of those face-up situations, that's a big part of what makes them successful, at least on the offensive end. And oftentimes they'll run different sets for Chris Middleton to get him isolation looks or to come off of screens with a live dribble or without a live dribble and to take jumpers and whatnot. But the other thing also is they do that for Drew too. So the post-up stuff that you see Russ doing last season, they do some variation, not as much as the Lakers probably did with Russ under Vogel's system, but they run some of that stuff for Drew Holiday. So I can see where it kind of fits if the Lakers decide to keep Russ, or where some of that stuff sort of aligns, one over the other. But the thing that I've been really curious about is sort of what's going to happen with Anthony Davis, and not in terms of whether he's going to be on this roster or not, but can he replicate what goes on with Giannis? And I think that's a very important question for Laker fans to ask themselves, and it's a very important question for fans of Anthony Davis to also think of. A few years back, 2 years ago, we were comparing Anthony Davis to Giannis, and Rich Paul famously said after Giannis, I believe when the Bucks got knocked down in the second round, Rich Paul famously said that if Anthony Davis was in that position, the Bucks would have gone farther, or maybe they would have won a championship. And then obviously immediately the year afterwards, Giannis ends up winning a championship. So playing exactly in the same format, his team is healthy and he's able to deliver for Milwaukee. So one of the things that I think has been, or an element of this that I think has been interesting to kind of think about is, I'm very high on Darvin Ham being the coach. I think he brings a modern offensive philosophy to the Lakers. I just don't know if Anthony Davis fits in exactly the same. And now for most Laker fans, you're probably hearing this and you're thinking to yourselves, well, we have LeBron James and he can, he can probably do some of the stuff that Giannis does in his role if we separate it out accordingly. And I agree. I think AD's fit defensively from playing help side defender and even in on ball situations and stuff like that. It's very easy to replicate what that is. And even for LeBron, when he's fully engaged and locked in most important moments at the end of the game, LeBron does a fairly decent job. There's been some slippage last season, so I'm not really worried about that. But it's really the offense, and what makes this a little bit difficult to what makes this a little bit difficult to sort of figure out is, we don't know what version of Anthony Davis's jumper is coming back. Is his jump shot going to return to pre-2020 levels? Is it going to continue to be what it is? Is he going to continue to shoot sub 30% from three? Like, those are all important things that are going to matter. And while we talk about roster construction and moving Russ and just adding addition by subtraction, one of the things that I think is important for us to understand is our stars also have to be able to work within what it is the coach wants to do as well. So one of the things that I was probably very vocal about was that Frank Vogel's offense and that post-up isolation style offense that he ran on the left block, it actually played directly into Anthony Davis's weaknesses, which is when he saw a double team, he struggled with passing out of it. He's better at making reads when he's facing up, looking at the court. He's not as good when he's backing players down. I think the Lakers have always thought that maybe Anthony Davis would figure that out and be able to, replicate, maybe soak some knowledge from LeBron and figure out what it was. And for 2 years, he struggled doing that to some degree. The year that we won the championship, because he was just making all of his jump shots, he never really had to pass out of it because he'd just take his jumper before anybody could get to him. Or he'd just shoot over him. But then we saw last year he struggled with that a little bit, or 2 seasons ago when Dennis Schroeder was on the roster. And then this last season he actually did better. But the main reason why he did better is because of Russ. Russ was making himself available. Every time he would pass the ball to Anthony Davis in the post, he would cut to the rim, basically put his hands up. There's tons of highlights of Russ just making the additional play, rolling to the rim after giving the ball to Anthony Davis in the post and Anthony finding him. Same thing with LeBron and stuff like that. So, there's a part of this that's really important that we have to think about. And I think, eventually in a future video, what we'll do is I'll try and kind of compartmentalize what it is that Giannis does well and what, not necessarily to compare the players to each other, but just to kind of get an understanding of what skill gap needs to be filled, right? When Giannis is face up and he's attacking the rim, his ball handling is really good. It's tough to steal the ball from him. He protects it really well. His footwork has gotten really good in the face up, and he's actually a really excellent passer. There are some things that he does with the ball when he's facing up that we just haven't seen Anthony Davis do. See him in like small glimpse highlight moments, but not consistently, not for 35 minutes a game or the, 20, 25, 28 minutes of a game that Giannis does that sort of stuff for. And so, jump shot, motor, ball handling, that kind of stuff matters. And one of the things that I think, Ham is probably going to be tasked with is getting more utility out of Anthony Davis. And I think that's something that is an immediate fix that's going to make a big difference for the Lakers. We had way too many possessions where we came down the floor and we would just isolate on one side of the floor and we'd run a clear out action. And it wasn't late game. It was just, we just run it. And it made it too easy for the defense to defend us. And now with Ham in tow, like I feel somewhat confident that the floor spacing will be more balanced. We'll run more, he'll encourage the players on the floor to screen for each other, to play with more purpose. Collapse, when you attack the rim, it doesn't necessarily have to just be pass and shoot. You can hold a live dribble and see who becomes available, see who becomes open. That's something that Drew Holiday does really well. It's something that Chris Middleton's been doing very well. On the defensive end, it's going to be interesting to see because I'm not quite sure that Anthony Davis is going to be our 5 to start. I would definitely expect the Lakers to try and target a floor spacing 5 who has a heavy build. So the Lakers really need a heavy build player like Brook Lopez Think of guys like Nikola Vucevic. Think of guys like Yusuf Nurkic. Think of guys like Andre Drummond even. Obviously he's not on the team, but they need a heavy build guy who's going to absorb the physicality that you get from certain fives, and then they need a high motor, high mobility. Both of those things are important. The motor has to be there, and the mobility has to be there for either a backup big, or maybe that'll be the starter, and then we'll get a floor spacing 5'8". I'm not sure what combination of it will work out, but it's very clear that if we're going to try and replicate some of what the Bucks do on the offensive end, there are very specific types of role players that we're going to have to target. And this word that I keep mentioning over and over again, these two words, high motor, that's going to be really important, because even when Mike Budenholzer and Darvin Ham were coaching the Hawks, they got regular routine action out of their guys. The Al Horford, Kyle Korver, Jeff Teague team, Joe Johnson I think was on that team, like those are all important things. Like they just consistently kept running their actions over and over and over again, and that's what made them successful. And they were a regular season juggernaut. Obviously in the playoffs, I think they got swept by LeBron. We need to be a regular season juggernaut to some degree, because we need to get LeBron James into the playoffs healthy, because that's when he starts, working his magic. He's one of the smartest players in the league. And if we can get into the playoffs healthy, with a healthy LeBron James, that'll make the Lakers successful. So I'll be interested to see what direction we go in. I know a lot of the interest right now is in regards to who we're going to move Westbrook for. I don't know if they're going to move Westbrook, if they're not going to move Westbrook, what the game plan is. We've heard some stuff about, Ham being tasked with possibly, the Lakers possibly retaining Russ and Ham making that situation work. We know that was a question that was being asked to coaching candidates, and this is just doing due diligence and stuff just in case Russ does end up on the roster. But it's just something worth keeping an eye on, and it's something worth thinking about, because we don't necessarily have, even aside from the salary cap and Russ's situation, our stars don't integrate. Our young star in Anthony Davis doesn't have exactly the same skill set as Giannis. There are things that they do have that they do share in common, but on the offensive end, they're not the same. And this is not a slight against one or the other. It's just something to think about, because if you can't replicate some of the rim pressure stuff that Giannis does, or some of the playmaking that Giannis does, or if you're just passing it on to LeBron, and Davis has to be able to do some of it, because then we're relying on LeBron to do too much again, and you risk injury and stuff like that. So those sort of things matter, especially in the regular season. So I'll be interested to see what direction the Lakers go in. But that's like the first thing that's on my mind, more than the assistant coaches, and then outside of what you can get back for Russ if we do decide to move him. Like the title of this is going to be Darvin Ham's been hired, so what now? Like that's probably going to be the number one thing that I think about. Is Anthony Davis, how do we use Anthony Davis and get more utility out of him? Not necessarily just to replicate what Giannis does, but to try and mimic to some degree what Giannis does. Because if he can make that leap, whether it's face up attacking the rim, or if it's if he finds his jumper, his free throw line jumper, mid range jumper, or if it's just making smart plays facing the basket for his teammates, that will go a long way. And I think it'll give the fans a lot of confidence, assuming he stays healthy, of course, give the fans a lot of confidence in his ability to continue to be part of this Lakers franchise and lead them forward. So I'm going to be really interested to see what direction, if any intel comes out in regards to it. Nothing may come out of it in terms of, what Ham plans on doing with Anthony Davis and how he wants to task and use him. Right now, I think the focus is still on Russ. But I'll be interested in seeing what happens. So appreciate you folks for tuning in. Look forward to the next piece of news that ends up coming out, whether it's a trade or if it's something else. And like I mentioned, if you can like and subscribe, it helps the channel out a lot. And you guys have been amazing so far. I think we're heading in a good direction towards building a smarter community, one that enjoys the game and thinks about it in it's not too much bag Twitter. It's not too much nerd analytics Twitter. It's just watching the game and enjoying it. So I appreciate everybody tuning in, and you guys continue to be amazing. So Catch you guys in the next video.